Hello, my CST110 students on Monday night. I am actually sorry that we can't meet because of course I obviously really enjoy interacting with you all. So I hope you will at least take this seriously. I recommend that you get the PowerPoints open and get a pencil and paper so that you can take notes, because again, I will have some tasks that I expect you to do to count for the attendance. This is part of the class participation, showing your attendance. And then, of course, there'll be points for actually doing the assignment as well. So pause it, get what you need, and then get ready to start. And we are on PowerPoint Chapter 8, Relationship Development, and then we will do Chapter 9. I think it looks at maintenance. So please get those PowerPoints, get what you need, and then start watching the video. And we're going to skip the overview and go straight into the actual topics. And the first one we start with is characteristics of interpersonal relationships. And as we know, interpersonal is communication between at least two different people. So what types of interpersonal relationships? We have the social, and a lot of these are voluntary, informal. Colleagues could be school or work. Casual friendships, the people we're friends with, but not that close to. So those would be more the social type. The intimate interpersonal relationships would be our significant others, spouse, family, best friends, the people who actually know the down and dirty about us. So how do they create and maintain our identity? We tend to associate sometimes with people like us, sometimes with people different from us, but the people we choose to be with especially says a little bit about who we are, because we tend to be with people who either we want to be like or they share qualities. So it kind of, we figure out who we are based on the people we're with, and it helps build that whole personality and such. And that's why, sometimes your parents will say, please don't hang around with them, they're bad news, because we become kind of who we are, but how we see ourselves and others see us are impacted greatly by the people we tend to choose to be around. Interpersonal relationships do fulfill one of the Maslow's needs. We looked at that at the beginning of the semester, that little pyramid. And down at the bottom, of course, the very first needs were the safety, being safe, having food, shelter, clothing. And then the idea of having interpersonal relationships is actually kind of down there. We are social animals. We do have a need of belonging. And even those of us who are true introverts, we still at least need a couple people to feel that we're a part of the world, that we matter to someone. So everyone needs someone, is the reality, as much as we may want to fight it. But the idea of social, we have friends and family we socialize with. For our health issues, we may join support groups, people who are going through issues that we are in, because sometimes we feel like we're alone in something. Having a support group is a good way to realize we're not alone. There are other people going through it too. And interpersonal relationships can also be therapeutic, because we are talking, we're getting help, and sometimes just realizing we're not alone, or sometimes just the idea of talking is therapeutic. Just being able to talk about what we're going through helps. Interpersonal relationships also allow for us to create communities, and there may be many different reasons why we have these different communities. And this is one of your first assignments. I want you to tell me what kind of community or group you've joined that has helped you. And some examples would be demographic groups, maybe socioeconomically, people who are trying to figure out, this would be older people, maybe thinking about retirement opportunities, or young people going to college, parents trying to, school-age children. So the demographics, there may be different reasons why we might have some group community formed to help with issues. Interests, maybe sports or music or book reading or hobbies and such, might be we join groups and form communities to share those activities. For support, again, maybe we need a group or community to help us deal with some issue we're going through. And these can also be online or physical, or what they call the brick and mortar locations. So For some people, the online is helpful if they can't get out much right now. Look at us, we're doing remote learning. We're online. We'll be next week doing an online class. So, but these communities are useful. We need them. They help us as we go through different issues in life or just feeling something. So again, I want you thinking about what kind of community have you joined or formed, and why. How was it helpful? Okay, so that's your first task. There is the idea of excommunication. Members who do not follow the rules of the group may be kicked out. Some deviation may be allowed, but if the deviation is too much or too often, then they can be kicked out, and that's the reality of communities. We do kind of punish and reward. Another characteristic of interpersonal relationships involves the idea of the social exchange theory, which we'll cover more a little bit later in another chapter. But the idea of social exchange theory, it has costs and rewards, and when we think about it, if a relationship is costing us too much, we may choose to end that relationship. If it's rewarding, then we'll stay in it. So that's the idea behind it. Next slide, we get to the idea of attraction theory. And there are different ways here. We have the interpersonal attraction. There are three main ones that we can think about as far as why we might find someone attractive and want to get to know. The first one is social attraction. We realize someone is interesting, fun to be around, and we think they'd be a great addition to a group we have, or just becoming a friend, or spending time with. The second one is physical attraction, and this doesn't have to be physical in a sexual way. This could be maybe someone just has a great smile, and we've talked about nonverbal communication, and that's a big part. Sometimes people do things, nonverbal things they do, that makes them look like someone who is kind or caring, but there's something physical that they did, something, the way they moved or something, that got our attention, and we were attracted to. And of course, obviously, there is just a pure attracted for sexual reasons, so that's reality. But there's a continuum there. It can go from one simple thing to maybe a big, much more physical thing. The last one is the idea of task attraction. Sometimes we see someone, we realize they're really skilled at something, and we think, this would be a good person to get to know because they're great at doing this. My ex, when we had a tenant in our, we had a duplex down in North Carolina, and our tenant Brian happened to be really good with tools in construction, and we were trying to build a doghouse, and my ex was like, it might be good to get to know Brian more because he might be able to help teach me how to build this doghouse. Sometimes the idea of task attraction, we realize someone might be good to know because they can help us with things, and it could be beneficial both ways. So what are some characteristics that attract us to others? Appearance. There's something about the way they look, the way they dress, the way they move that is definitely an attraction. If someone looks too scary or gross or something, obviously we're not going to be attracted, won't want to be around them. Proximity. It's hard to build a relationship on someone who's too far away to really talk to, and especially if you're looking for a close friend or a romantic relationship. If someone is close to us, it's going to be more likely that we're going to want to get to know them more. Similarities, people who are the same as us, someone we realize we can share activities and do some things that we enjoy, that's going to be an attraction. But also complementary differences. Maybe someone is more outgoing than you are, and you realize this could be a person who could pull you out a little bit, get you more involved, and vice versa as well. So sometimes being that balance, someone different enough that it balances you out, that could be something that attracts us as well. So that's the idea of attraction theory. The next slide, we get into uncertainty reduction theory. When we first meet someone as a stranger, we kind of size each other. We're looking to see, how they're acting, and the idea of stranger danger. We're assessing whether this person is safe to get close to or talk to. If they look too scary, then obviously we're not going to try and do anything. But the idea here is that we're full of uncertainty when we first meet, so we want to reduce that uncertainty. And there are two types of uncertainty. We have the cognitive uncertainty, which has to do with beliefs and attitudes. Is this someone who shares the same beliefs we have? what kind of morals do they have, or what kind of person they are. The next one is behavioral uncertainty, and this is where their actions, are they acting in a way that appears threatening, or do they appear safe? And that's going to, determine whether we actually take more actions to talk to them more. So then there are three stages mainly. The entry stage is where we first interact. We shake hands, say hello, whatever the cultural norms for greetings and small talk involve. The personal stage, and this is, we realize we're going to be talking a little bit longer. Maybe we're together for some reason on an airplane or someplace out in the park or something, but we end up having time to actually talk more. We start talking, learning a little bit about attitudes, beliefs, or kind of feeling each other out, trying to see, do we have some similarities that might be worth learning more about each other. And obviously, if someone's attitudes, beliefs are far different from ours, we may decide not to. And this is where we get to the exit stage. Should we continue the relationship or not? And there are a couple of reasons why we may or may not. Future contacts, for example, someone you're going to see in class, someone you're going to be working with, someone who has joined a family or not, maybe new to the family. So future contact may have a big influence on whether we want to get to know that person deeper. Maybe they fulfill some need. And again, we have those different needs, social, task, and physical. Is this someone that will fill one of those needs? And then deviance. Sometimes someone's just different enough that you kind of want to get to know them more because they're different, they're unusual, and that intrigues us. So that could be. Or maybe the deviance is too scary and realize, no, we don't want to see them because they're too strange. So that's the idea of types and states of uncertainty reduction theory. What are some strategies we use to reduce it? And there are three ways that we try to reduce this uncertainty. The first one is the passive stage. This is where we just kind of watch, observe. We're not talking to anyone. We're just observing. Those of us who are introverts and we like to observe, we're good at this. So passive, we're just observing. We're not doing anything. We're just observing how they're acting, and how they're communicating. The second part would be active, and this is where we may ask someone else, hey, you see that person over there? What do you think of them? Why do they do? What's their name? Whatever. But we're actively trying to get information about the other person through someone else. And that third stage would be interactive. Now, this is where we actually go to that person, ask them questions, and get to know them directly versus through someone else. So, task here, something you need to do here is think of someone you met recently, or how you first, met your friend or someone. What strategy did you use first? Did you just sit and watch them first? Did you ask questions about them first? Or did you just directly go to them and start asking questions? So think of a friendship you've had. What strategy did you use first? What did you do and why? Okay, so there's your next task that you need to write in the response. And there is the next slide has a video, a clip of Hitch. It's good to watch. I will say they did make a mistake, whoever made this. When he is asking the bartender questions about the girl, that is not passive. That is active. He is asking questions. His passive was when he was just sitting and watching her. But asking the bartender questions is actually active. That's a mistake they made in the video. But it's a nice little, I recommend watching it. It's cute, and it's a perfect example of how deviance is also involved. Next slide, social penetration theory. So here we have how we build intimacy in relationships. And that's through self-disclosure, which is how we share personal information. We are self-disclosing. We are telling them stuff about ourselves. And there are two different qualities of self-disclosure. Depth would be how deep into a topic do we go? And breadth would be how many different topics are we talking about? And Shrek, he goes, "Oh, you can't just get to know me right away. I'm like an onion. You have to peel the layers to get to know me." He tells that to Donkey at one point. So that's a good example. But there are different stages we have here. The first one is the orientation stage, and this is the first point of contact. Think of the uncertainty reduction theory is at play here. We're kind of just looking at social norms, being casual, polite, figuring out, is this someone we should interact with more, reducing that uncertainty a little bit. So anything we do here, we're definitely going to be going around maybe a few different things to talk about, whether nice day or not, what they're doing, why they're there, whatever. It's going to be simple and safe topics. The exploratory affective exchange stage, this is where now maybe you've talked enough that you feel a little more comfortable, so you may get a little bit deeper into a couple more personal topics, but it's still going to be moderate. It won't be like religion and politics at this point, but you're looking at beliefs, attitudes of some safe topics, what we feel, so maybe still a little breath going, but also a little deeper into some topics. The effective exchange stage is we're getting closer now. We know each other's personal values, beliefs. We may have more personal haptics, such as touch, maybe actually putting an arm on or hugging, giving a kiss on the cheek or whatever. But we actually have an idea of who we are a little much more here. The stable exchange theory, we're definitely now much more intimate. We're definitely going deeper into topics. I mean, we're way in. There's trust. We can predict what they may or may not say or do in situations. And so now we've pretty much gone deep to the core of that onion at this point. Depenetration, this is where we withdraw from the relationship, we stop sharing, and the social exchange theory kind of fits here, the idea that the costs were getting too great, something about them, we weren't getting rewards, so we realized we need to get out of the relationship because it's not filling our needs or we're not feeling comfortable, so we just now pull out completely. There's no getting into the depth there as much anymore. So what I would like you to do here is think about what is an example of something you might do in the exploratory affective exchange stage. Give me an example here that you might consider to be a moderate topic, okay? And the next slide, we have a video clip of social, which I don't think that link is playing anymore, so don't even worry about it. I had to find something else in class last time I played it, and I've got to replace it. NAP stage model of relational development. We go through different stages, and not everyone goes through all these stages. We may go up and down. We may skip some stages. We may terminate and start all over again. But these are basically, again, remember everything in this class. We have like that norm, but the people fall out of those norms as well. But in general, coming together, the initiating, when we first meet, initiating that relationship, just talking, reducing the uncertainty reduction, the social penetration, experimenting, getting to know each other a little bit, intensifying, we were comfortable, we talk, we spend more time together, integrating, everyone expects to see you together, it's definite, more intimate, and people expect to see you together, and you relate to each other, and bonding where you declare this is our relationship, we're best friends, we're significant others, whatever it is that you want to be. So those are some basic stages. And then the coming apart stage, differentiating. This is where things are kind of maybe not going so well. We start spending less time. Instead of this is ours, now this is yours, this is in mine. Circumscribing, we're spending less time together. We're avoiding that lunch together where we used to spend lunch together. Stagnation, maybe things are getting boring, too predictable. Relationship doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Avoidance is where you just avoid topics that are difficult, you avoid each other. And then terminating, you realize this isn't working and you just declare the relationship over, and then talk to people as far as, oh no, we're not together, we're not best friends, we're not whatever it is you were anymore. Dialogic communication, balance how you express your feelings. Sometimes we focus so much on how it's making us feel, but we need to also balance how is it making them feel. Give the benefit of the doubt. Don't always assume that people are out to do the worst. Exercise empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. And most importantly, invest time in your relationship. Time is love, right? If people don't have time for you, then maybe you're not quite as important as they keep saying you are. And don't ever let someone make you feel you're not important. Obviously, if you know they're really busy and they've got stuff going, that's one thing. But when you know they don't and they're still choosing not to make time for you, you might want to rethink that. Okay, so that ends chapter 8. And you have those tasks to do. And now we are going to go to chapter 9 and get through this. And this will actually go a little quicker. So I'm going to again skip the overview. I'm going to go to the third slide. And this gets into relationship maintenance behaviors. So this chapter is looking at how we maintain these relationships that we've created. So here's some things, some behaviors that help maintain a relationship is obviously positivity. If you're too negative, that's going to tear down a relationship. So positivity is important, trying to be positive. Assurances, letting them know that you really care, that the friendship is important, or whatever the relationship, that it's important. Sharing tasks, and even as friends we do this. We help each other out. Acceptance. Something I always tell people when they're having trouble with their partner is you either accept how they are, accept that that's something you can't change, or you get out. So acceptance is realizing that this is how someone is. You can't change it and you shouldn't want to. And if you can't accept that, then you end the relationship. Don't expect people to change. Self-disclosure obviously is very important. Without sharing information, there is no relationship. Social networks, this is where maybe, people are aware that you're best friends in a significant relationship, whatever. But social networks, you have friends and family from each other that you're sharing together. Relationship talks, meta communication, and this is kind of a funny word, but meta basically means doing whatever it is. So meta communication would be communicating about the way you communicate. And if you think about that, even with your friends, you may talk about, when you say this, it hurts my feelings. That's meta communication. You're communicating about the way you communicate. So what I would like you to do here is to end your post, and you should be doing a bullet point. I don't need a paragraph, just bullet points for each of these tasks I'm giving you. For this bullet point, tell me what is an example of meta communication, and maybe you have an example of something you've done with one of your friends or family or something. And then today's families. Today's families are pretty much anything goes. It's not the nuclear family with the mom, dad, and the two kids and the dog, whatever. Nowadays, it's single parent. All kinds of people. In my own family, it's an example of how crazy the families get. But that makes a big thing. And family is pretty much knowing that someone cares about you makes a family, really, I think. Blood or whatever doesn't matter. It's the people who love us and take care of us, I think. And I would think a lot of you agree with that. Next slide. Now we get to the social exchange theory that I mentioned in the last chapter. So social exchange theory is the idea that a relationship's worth equals the reward minus the cost. And my first marriage would be an example of, even though it was a pretty abusive relationship, he never hit me. He was good with the kids. He was a good dad. So the rewards, I got to stay home, be a stay-at-home mom. The costs were kind of low at that point, even though it did hurt. And the point where I finally left, when I realized that our parenting values kind of changed a little bit. I wasn't always agreeing with some of his decisions, and that's when the cost started getting higher, and I realized I had to get out. So another aspect of the social exchange theory is the comparison level. We have these general expectations that this is what I want in a relationship. And maybe we don't have all of that, but the comparison level of alternatives is the idea of options. Do we have other people who could fill those general expectations? And if we don't, we're more likely to stay in that relationship. I didn't have any options when I left. I just realized the costs were getting too high. I knew what I really wanted, but I really didn't have any alternatives. I just realized I couldn't stay with the costs anymore. So we do, if you think about it, we all have ideas of what we want for either a best friend or, a romantic relationship. And that's the whole idea of how social exchange theory works. And I want you to, for this task here, give me a sentence about how we can compare this to the stock exchange, because this definitely works with the idea of the stock exchange. Was it you buy low and sell high, something like that? So give me an idea of how these two, just write a sentence how those two work together, social exchange theory and the stock exchange. The next bullet point gets into communication privacy management. And, we have private information. We share it with certain people, and I'm sure everyone has certain, good friends, and some people even have maybe 2 or 3 best friends, but maybe they don't share the same kind of information with each best friend. I think everyone has that one who we maybe share more private information than we do with the others. And these are our deliberate confidants, the people we trust and we confide in, and especially when it comes to something that would make us very vulnerable if more people knew. We set up boundaries with these people, and there's a boundary linkage, maybe someone along with that they could join, and then a boundary ownership. My best friend Paul, I knew he was going to marry Kathy, but even though I knew that, there was that boundary, and it wasn't my part to tell her. So when she was kind of hinting, does he, because she was worried about, being older, she was worried about being in a relationship with someone who wasn't serious. And I couldn't break that boundary with my friendship with Paul, though, by saying, oh yeah, he wants to marry you. I had to just, I know he's serious. I know he's looking for a relationship. So why don't you just hang in and give him a chance? So I had to stay within that boundary. Boundary permeability and boundary turbulence. Permeability is the idea of being able to cross a boundary. And I don't know if I did, I don't think I mentioned it to you yet, but when, Paul and I, we have like each other's deepest secrets. And when I realized he and Kathy were getting married, I realized that she might have questions, and I didn't want her getting worried because he was like keeping like, oh, I can't tell you. So I actually sat and opened that boundary a little bit and pulled her into it and told her a few things about myself to reassure her that, number one, I wasn't a threat, but so he could also, like, if I happened to call and she heard us talking, he could actually talk about some of my things without, feeling that he was breaking the boundary link. Boundary turbulence, of course, is when we are breaking that boundary and we are actually giving out those secrets, and that's always a bad thing to do. Everyday talks. When you come home at the end of the day, sometimes these everyday talks are much more important than big quality, because it's just that day-to-day, hey, how was your day? Talking about what you did during the day, what we call small talk, can be really important. Kids especially need that. I think nowadays with everyone on their phones, and kids are coming home from school, they're right on their phones, their games, and dinner time. I mean, how many people have dinner conversations anymore? I think this is something that's really hurting relationships and needs to be considered, especially with the kids. So these little everyday talks, making a point of having times that we just sit and chat, dinner time, especially meal times, having conversations. And again, especially you have kids, but even within those important interpersonal relationships, making sure that we're spending time to just have regular little chit chat and stuff, because that really is important. It has a lot to do with how we feel, and feeling safe with someone, and feeling that we matter. And if you think about that, maybe you can consider the last time you really had just simple talk instead of some big dramatic talk that you need to have. Next slide. Relationship maintenance theory, some more relational dialectics. And this gets into the push and pulls of our need versus their need. And again, if you think about how we're all very different, we all have different needs, and yet we're together, there can be problems. especially if there are cultural differences, because again, every culture has different kinds of things they work on. So Baxter and Montgomery came up with 3 primary tensions. We have the first one is the integration and separation, and this is the idea of connected versus autonomy. And there's an internal pull where we want to be with someone, or we need to be alone, have some of our own space. And then the external pull would be family and friends, the inclusion versus seclusion. And for, my daughter and her husband, I mean, he's very strong Bolivian family. They're all about being together and together a lot. And my daughter, we're more introverted, and she is a true introvert. So for her, the idea of having time to herself versus time with the family, or even just time coming home. And if you think about when you come home, are you the kind that you just want to automatically connect to your family and start chit chat? Or are you the kind you need like 30 minutes to unwind and calm down? And that can be a problem if one of the people in the relationship think, oh, you never want to talk to me, not realizing, yeah, but they just need time to wind down. They need some space sometimes. That can be a problem. Stability and change. This is the certainty versus uncertainty, the predictability versus novelty. And this is, I think, when you get a little bit more where you might get infidelity and cheating in a romantic relationship. Some people need that knowing exactly what's going to happen, the type who plan out, if you go on vacation, they've got every step planned out. For someone else who's more into the novelty, uncertainty, that might be restraining for them. They just want to go and explore, and let's see what happens. When you have those kind of people together, that can be a problem. I think my cheater guy, the one I almost married, definitely he needed, I think he was in love with the idea of love, and he liked that whole excitement. For me, I obviously I'm a person who likes to get out and do things, but when it comes to a relationship, I prefer a little bit more stability. But people who need like everything predictable versus those who just like to go with the flow, that can cause some problems. Expression and non-expression. You have the people who just share everything. They have no problem. Everything they do, everything they feel, they just talk about it. And then you have the ones who are more reticent, and it's not that they're hiding. They just don't feel the need to share stuff. And that can cause a real problem. Well, why are you hiding? Why can't we talk about a relationship? And they're like, well, why does anyone need to know? It's our business. So this can be a little bit of an issue too. How do you manage these? We have the spiraling inversion, which is the alternate, where we maybe take turns deciding which one we're going to cover. Segmentation, you choose, this is what we'll work on now. Balance is to compromise, maybe understanding, okay, we can't agree here, but let's work on here. Integration, where you take care. So maybe like that integration versus separation. Maybe Thanksgiving, you have the big family dinner, everyone all together. And then for Christmas, maybe you decide, let's make this more personal, quiet, so that everyone's getting their needs met in some way. Recalibration is the idea of just saying the issues in a different way. Sometimes if we look at it in a different viewpoint, that can help us understand it better. And then reaffirmation is just realizing, and my daughter and her husband, they had to accept the differences, that she's an introvert, he's very outgoing, loves being around people, and focusing how they can use that to maybe help each other, and accepting that either they accept each other as they are, or they call it quits. And of course, they loved each other enough that they realized that they would have to accept each other and just find ways to make sure that each of their needs were being met. So those are important. So this is your task I would like you to do, is just briefly give me an example of one of these 10. Just choose one, and either a friend or a family or something. How did you deal with that? What was the tension, and how did it affect the relationship? And what did you do to try and take care of it? So that should be your last task. And then the next, we have relational dialectics. We have 2 videos. You can watch if you like. It kind of explains them. And then down to the last slide, dialogic communication. Embrace new experiences. Try to not judge new relationships by past relationships. Sometimes holding on to the past can cause a problem. Privilege quality and quantity time. Sometimes having a lot of time is nice, but really, is it quality? So kind of think about what you need having quality versus quantity. Be loyal to the relationship. And if you can't be loyal, then find a way to get out of it. Don't break trust and do things that hurt the other person. Avoid judging and controlling your partner. You should never try to manipulate, judge, or control people in any way. Celebrate the commonalities and appreciate the differences. The whole thing is sometimes that, it's cool, we got these things in common, but hey, we're different here. How can we either enjoy those differences and maybe try them, or at least, listen and show interest, and give your partner space if they need to. Some people like being connected at the hip, but really sometimes having time, you still need to be who you are, and you shouldn't ever change yourself to be someone, to fit and keep that person. Always be who you are, be true to yourself, but give each other space. So that is chapters 8 and 9. So please make sure you do those tasks that I listed. And I'm not going to say how many, because if you didn't get them all, then maybe you need to listen more carefully. Please, I need you getting on Zoom and playing with it. It's on the My Nova with the Canvas and other links. You should see Zoom. I need you playing with that. I have to do that Zoom for my Thursday class, and we will be using Zoom next Monday for our class. So I am expecting next Monday, 7:30, okay? Because I know there are people who travel and stuff, but 7:30 next Monday, I expect to have a class through Zoom. We will be virtually online together because I want to go through and explain how to start the research, organizing your information for your speeches. Also, you have to be working in your groups. Google, you can arrange a time. And if I hear that someone is not cooperating, I need to know. Send me names of classmates who are not doing what they need to do. I will take them out of the group, give them a 0, because there's no reason, telephones, computers, that you can't at least get on Google a couple times a week, communicate, look at the document, and keep up with each other as far as what you're doing, because class has to keep going. We can't just stop. I think almost all of you need this class to graduate, so let's not waste this semester. We just have to adapt and do what we can. But if there's anyone who maybe Wednesday sometime would be willing to get on Zoom with me, because I need a student who can join me in Zoom so that I can see what we can or not do. But if you're willing to experiment with me Wednesday sometime, if you could just text me or email me and say, hey, I'm willing to guinea pig with you, because you're going to need it next week, use it next week anyway. But 7:30 next Monday, Zoom, we will have a class meeting, virtual. And then Google, please be setting a time that all of you will be online on Google together, so you can actually communicate in real time and move forward with your group projects. Please stay safe. Stop buying toilet paper if you don't need it. And wash your hands. Take care. I am looking forward to seeing you hopefully in a few weeks. Bye-bye.